What's better than F1? Well, as they say, less is more. So let's ditch the tires and go down to zero. That's right, F-Zero is here. And if you have a need for speed, we have the game for you. It has it all. Speed, super jets, jumps, magnets, landmines, other cars getting in the way. Like, kind of a lot, if I'm being honest. Twists, turns. And how do you play the game? Simple. You take to the road with your crew of motley racers, a bounty hunter, a former Special Forces soldier, an underworld kingpin, and an aristocratic doctor. But more importantly, F-Zero brings the racing home, with honestly the first of its kind graphics and control. But can you master the courses and race to victory? Or will you just be left in the zero-gravity dust?
Retro Recall.
Welcome back to Retro Recall, the show with more nostalgia than the number of times you're going to bounce off of walls in F-Zero.
Ugh, it's so many times. Well, obviously, everybody, today we're talking about, well, the springboard of racing games, F-Zero. We are also going to do a little bit different approach today. Rather than the hilarious good and bad, we're just going to have more of a fun conversation about the game itself of F-Zero. That's because F-Zero doesn't really fit nicely into a format because it's just a racing game.
It's super streamlined. Let's be honest here. I expected to come back and play this for the first time in 20 or 30 some years and be like, holy crap, there's all this other stuff in here I forgot about. Nope. It's just racing.
Yeah.
That's it.
You just race around. But the goal was to see, in hindsight, can we actually still appreciate this game? So that's more today's approach. Yeah. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So why don't we kick this off and talk about the game release? Because this was one of the first games on the Super Nintendo system, right?
Yeah, it was actually fun looking this up. So it released in North America, August 23rd in 1991. It was the launch of Super Nintendo. So you got Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, Gradius 3, and SimCity.
I remember
funny.
this.
I had to look them all up.
Clearly. Yeah.
Gradius 3, I've never played.
Yeah,
SimCity.
Space shooting game.
I never liked as a game. I've never liked any of the sim games.
What? Oh, no.
But Pilot Wings, randomly, researching this episode was the first time I saw Pilot Wings in probably 30 years. Went, oh, I loved Pilot Wings. So now we may have to do an episode on Pilot Wings. It won't be a long one.
And
but
SimCity.
I did.
And we'll have to do SimCity because I love SimCity. And you, man, we'll have different opinions.
I would just build it and then have the monster destroy it. That's all I ever did in SimCity. That's all I ever did.
Oh, man, I learned so much about the world and the way things work based on SimCity and Civilization games. But anyway, Pilot Wings was super impressive, too, because they really leaned into the Mode 7 stuff that the Super Nintendo could do. We'll get into that, yeah.
Mode 7 is going to be the majority of today's show, if I'm being honest.
Right. So, and speaking of Mode 7, I've got a fun little fact here to add in before John continues with this stuff. Did you know that F-Zero was the testing ground for being able to build a racing game using Mode 7, which would eventually lead to Mario Kart, because Mario Kart wasn't a launch game on the system, right? And they were basically using this as like a technological demo to see if that was possible. And then they realized, hey, we can actually make a game out of this. So let's release it and see if it works and people like it. And they did, which led to Mario Kart, which is like the biggest kart racer in the world these days.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's basically Mario Kart and I think Gran Turismo. That's it.
Or Forza, like the
on
Forza,
Xbox.
Forza
Motorsport. You're right.
Yeah. But man, we wouldn't have Mario Kart if it wasn't for F-Zero.
Yeah, and we're going to cover a little bit, guys, on the Mode 7 graphics, because this is a huge advancement in gaming. But real quickly, F-Zero itself was a pretty simple game. You picked one of 4 hover cars, and you would compete across 3 different leagues, each having 5 tracks, and with 4 difficulty tiers. So do your math. That was your total options. Yeah. That was it. But the game was actually very popular, and we're going to dive a bit more into that. But I can't not talk about these eras because we do nostalgia and it's always fun to dive back into what was really going on there. And so I sorry if you all don't love this, too bad. I'm going to keep doing it because I really like it. August 1991 is a depressingly long time ago for me.
Yes.
It is hard to look this up, but the top song is Everything I Do For You by Bryan Adams. And once again, I have no idea what this song is.
Oh, dude, I totally remember
clue.
this. This was from the Robin Hood movie. Remember the Kevin Costner?
You're right. There was a Robin Hood movie around this era, so maybe it was.
It was. I remember the music video used footage from the Robin Hood movie, and Bryan Adams. This was Everything I Do. It sounds like he smokes too much. Like
I also don't know who Bryan Adams is. It's kind of the other problem.
But you didn't listen to pop music. Like this is one of those things that was on the radio. So this is one of the differences between your age and my age is that in 91, I was in middle school. I was 12 years old. I was in middle school. And I was at that time in my life where I was trying to figure out what kind of music I liked. So I would watch music videos on MTV and VH1. And so I caught a lot of this stuff. And I can't tell you that I'm a Bryan Adams fan, but I definitely remember this scratchy voice when he sang songs. Like,
yeah,
he was freaking John Mayer before John Mayer was a thing.
Yeah, I'd say 94.
Without the guitar.
Well, actually, it makes sense because with our age difference, 94 is my version of that. 94 is my music explosion year because I think I'm 3 years younger than you. So boom, it lines up exactly. But so yeah, I will say music-wise, 2 weeks after this release, you get Metallica's Black Album, which people have a lot of opinions on, but I'm gonna stand by. It's a solid album. Is it Metallica's best album? No, but it's a solid album that they did. And
also, they real quick, they also wouldn't be freaking Metallica and as popular as they are if it weren't for this album.
Yeah, a lot of Metallica fans will wish they weren't as popular as they are.
Absolutely. Like that's just how that good stuff goes. Right? Oh, I'm the OG fan because I listened to the early albums. And you
Ride the Lightning.
The popular one. And so you're not a real fan. And it's like, yeah, but if I was freaking Metallica and I could go from being like a small time like thing to selling.
This album is why they own airplanes. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Plural.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I will say, but on the flip side of bands making lots of money, 3 weeks after this, you get Nirvana's Nevermind. And if you want, the reason I make that reference, if you ever want to see something funny, you go to YouTube and type in Nirvana Madonna ticket prices. You
yeah.
It's one of the best reviews when they discover that Madonna was charging $50.
Right, and Kurt looks like high out of his mind in the interview, and he's like, why would anybody pay $50 for a ticket?
$50 for a ticket to a concert.
And he's like, what do we charge? Like 20?
Yeah. We're charging $20 and we feel bad about it.
Right.
Anyway, it's a great moment.
So good.
But Nirvana Nevermind comes out, which moves the needle massively for indie music.
Oh, absolutely.
I will say, but 1991, the summer, you just mentioned Robin Hood. This is an amazing summer for movies because you've got Hot Shots has just come out, which, whatever.
We talk about that on occasion, yeah.
Point Break. Terminator 2, which if you listen to the 40K Lorecast, I think is horribly overrated. I'm sorry. And it's in the second month of murdering it in the theaters at this point.
Yeah, I was exactly the right age to enjoy Terminator 2 when it came out. Yeah.
You've also got the second Bill and Ted movie, which is still good, by the way. And one of my favorite action films this entire era, Double Impact, in which you don't get one, but two Jean-Claude Van Dammes, because he plays identical twins. In the movie, he was a treasure. It was.
Did you know? I saw something recently about him that he was originally supposed to play the Predator in the first Predator movie, but he got fired because he was such a diva.
Like I said, he also probably was too small too. The guy who plays the Predator is like 6'7". He's this monster of a human being.
They went like the outfit that he's in some of the early pre-production is a totally different character design too. It's weird.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, let's talk about F-Zero because that was fun. So F-Zero is also the plot of F-Zero. So if you guys don't know, you can go online anytime you want and pull the manual for any of these games. And I love reading manuals from early games. F-Zero does not disappoint. It is 80s anime, basically. Oh, the year is 2560. Humanity has expanded into the galaxy. They've encountered aliens. They've colonized planets. And in this expansion, the ultra-rich who control the intergalactic trade have become bored and they want entertainment.
Right.
So they made F1 racing, but more dangerous and faster and with hover cars.
Right. So it's F-Zero, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what I didn't understand at 12 years old is that this was a playoff of F1. I had no idea why it was titled what it was.
I didn't realize it either until I was doing the research for this. And I was like, wow, that pun missed. It took 35. It took 35 years for that pun to hit. Wow. Yeah. All right. Good job, guys. But they built an intergalactic racing circuit where only the bravest and craziest drivers would compete, where you have jumps and landmines and Magnets.
Freaking magnets. Oh,
Magnets. Yeah.
that's the worst part of this game.
And then other drivers trying to drive you off the course.
Right. And you start with 4 cars on the track, but somehow there's just all these other cars around for some reason.
I will say, for any of our listeners who are older than you and I, Tom, there's a lot of homage to Speed Racer in this too. I did notice that when I'm going through it, and I was like,
Go Speed Racer.
This is Go Speed Racer Go. Yeah. Which my father had to show me. That's
I remember Speed Racer. I had a friend who introduced me into like Japanimation, as we called it back in the day.
Right. It was Japanimation.
Remember when people would say Japanimation?
I totally forgot it was called that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I learned about Ranma 1/2 and Akira and Speed Racer from my friend who lived across the street, and then was like,
Voltron,
again, middle school age.
Yeah, you had early Voltron, was that
Voltron? I remember watching, I watched that as a kid, but then there was even like all the different, what was it called? Macross stuff, like the robots that turn into jets and spaceships and all sorts of anyway.
Those were good days. So, and this one checks all those categories, and they're right, because you've got like the drivers of the cars. You've got one of them is Dr. Stewart. He's the one driving the yellow car. He's a member of the nobility. He's also a doctor. So he's representing the societal elites. And I will say, the only thing I care about him is they have a little cartoon in it. And in the beginning of the race, everyone's got their little phrase. And his phrase is, "I shall win to honor beautiful women everywhere."
That's also my phrase.
Yes, that's what you say. But before you take off,
what I say.
Race.
Yeah, every time I get in my car, I turn on the car and I say to myself, I shall win the honor of beautiful women everywhere.
What is this? The next one is Pico, who's an alien and is a former special forces soldier known for his cold-hearted style, who's willing to win at all costs, driving a green car that's reinforced. And then there's Samurai Gorho, who's the leader of a band of thieves driving a stolen car.
Oh, he's a bad samurai.
Oh, yeah. But the coup de grace is the main character who's driving a blue car, and the cover is Captain Falcon, who is a renowned pilot / bounty hunter, which is just beyond Japanimation 80s of like, we're not even trying, guys. We're just going, what's the most badass thing you could be? Because Dog the Bounty Hunter isn't coming out for 15 more years. That's true. At this era, we still think bounty hunters are cool, not crystal meth smoking, leather skinned individuals.
Right. I have a feeling there's a little bit of a Boba Fett sort of thing going on here.
Probably.
He's got the helmet, he's a bounty hunter and a pilot. But also, fun fact, the reason they developed Captain Falcon was because they were trying to come up with a mascot for the Super Nintendo console itself, other than like Mario or Link or anything like that.
Why?
They wanted to. Right. So they invented Captain Falcon, whose colors are blue and red and yellow, like some of the colors on the Japanese version of the gamepad. You might, if I had said on the gamepad, you would have been like, wait, no, the buttons were purple and like a lighter purple. No. In Japan, they were red, blue, yellow, and green, I believe. So they wanted to put those colors in his outfit. And
hold on. Our idea was, look, we have Super Mario and we have Link. We'll probably
and everybody loves them.
Yeah, we'll throw Donkey Kong in here at some point.
Sure.
You know what we need? Let's make a weird dude who's kind of flies a car.
Right.
What were you thinking?
We'll name him Captain Falcon. And then on top of it, they put him into Smash Bros. And I don't remember which edition of Smash Bros. It was. But
he is?
Fairly early on. Yeah, he became one of the most OP characters. For a long time, he was the like go-to character you play as if you want to beat everyone else up and competitive. So he became very popular because of Smash Bros., not because of F-Zero. In fact, most people who have ever played Smash Bros. Probably don't even know what game he was originally from.
Yeah.
So he went from being like planned mascot to obscurity to famous character from Smash Bros. That nobody knew his origins. Like,
but everybody's playing it.
Weird.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah. But let's get to the game itself. So the game itself, when you go to play it, one of the first things the game did well was they did create actual diversity. One challenge with racing games up to this point was you basically picked the same car and it changed color. That's all you did. Right. With F-Zero, they put some effort in. So you had, and what they decided was there's 4 features that matter in racing: acceleration, top speed, turning, and then armor. was the thing. We're going to crash a lot. And so each of these cars had a different combination of each. Captain Falcon's one was the most average of the group, making kind of, in theory, the easiest to play. So if you play on beginner or like intermediate, you can win with Captain Falcon. Decent armor, etc. The next one is Wild Goose, which is the green car, which had lower acceleration, higher top speed, with worse handling and armor. So you can just crash into everybody. I don't think the car was functional, but maybe purpose. Then you had the Golden Fox with high acceleration, which was really good for there are a couple of tracks that you do a lot of turning. But the one I find interesting is called the Fire Stingray, which is the fat pink car, which is the one driven by the samurai guy. It's secretly the best car in the game. And
absolutely.
People who know the game thought it's the best one because it had the worst acceleration, but it had the highest top speed. But for some reason, it had super good cornering. So you could actually get to top speed and maintain it. And if you wanted to beat the highest levels of the game, you had to get good with the Fire Stingray, which is, from a game development, game design standpoint, was really good because you were rewarding players for spending time to develop skills to make themselves better at it. And you actually made the higher levels of the game beatable. Despite them being challenging, as opposed to cough Battletoads.
Now, what's so interesting about you relaying all of that now is that, and I'm just patting myself on the back a little bit, but really it's not me, it's the game designers. I figured that out when I played this as a kid. And by the time, and I didn't own the game, I rented it, but by the time I was challenging the highest, most difficult parts of the game, I realized that I had to play as the fat pink car in order to stand a chance. And on top of it, I had to plan every corner in order to maintain as much top speed as possible in order to potentially get first place. And if I didn't, it was my fault. It wasn't the game. I just needed to get better at it.
And that's another piece that we should talk about. The way the track design was nice, and they did really well. Like any good racing game, as you get through each circuit, it's 5 tracks per circuit. Each track gets progressively more difficult. And by more difficult, a lot more twists and turns. You get
and jumps and slow down areas and all sorts of things.
You get double apexes, chicanes, sweepers, hairpins.
This game taught me a lot about racing and about taking the most optimal corners and stuff. So things I learned from this, I used in Gran Turismo later on.
100%. This is the first thing that really taught you how to cut a corner because it was the first time you were doing it. And you also, other fun thing that they did was, which is a mistake I think a lot of games make, is you were racing 3 other people, but you weren't alone on the track. There were random other cars. So if you got to first place, one thing in a lot of games, once you get to first place in a racing game, the track's empty for you now.
It's no longer a challenge. You're just doing a time trial at that point.
Exactly. Not an F-Zero. In F-Zero, there's random cars still all over the track, and some of them actually blow up on you randomly, which is
that part I feel is a little annoying. I understand why they added it in, but the fact that, and we can get into this stuff later, but when you run into other cars or when you hit a wall, it is very punishing. If you bump into another car, you spin and you turn towards them and you go more in that direction rather than bouncing off them in the opposite direction. And when you hit walls, you ping pong off and hit another wall.
It's a hover car, Tom, and those are magnets.
Right. I guess so.
I don't want to have weird. I don't want to have to involve Insane Clown Posse here about how magnets work, but you know.
This is it's a little overly punishing in that regard, but I get why they did it because it solves the problem of the game being boring once you're out in front of everybody.
They also threw in landmines too, because why not? It gets, and then and
if you jump and fly off the course and explode on what I guess is the, I don't know, cityscape below, you're just done. It doesn't put you back on the course and say, keep going. It's like, you want to restart? You failed.
And so what all of this ends up doing is creating actually a really dynamic, for lack of a better phrase, racing experience. You do get, as you progress through the game, you don't just get this nice kind of easy process. Each level changes enough that you do have to develop a good varied skill set, and you really do have to understand both how to read a map, how to memorize a track fairly quickly, and pick your lanes while also being alert to your surroundings. Again, for a racing game this old, it's good. I really put some time into it because I was like, oh, this is solidly challenging.
Yeah, no, it was the sort of thing where going back and playing it again, I didn't remember any specific tracks but I did, if I didn't get first place on one and played it again and went back and played it a second time or a third time, oftentimes I was able to simply by just getting better at learning the track and when to boost and when to cut a corner and how to avoid the other cars a little bit better and other those little details. So it fits that Nintendo design concept of like, give somebody a thing, then teach them how to use the thing and then expand on that thing and then let them experiment with the thing you taught them.
100%.
And then you just constantly get better. And then by the time you've learned all that knowledge, when you get to the harder tracks, it adds up. And then they're not as difficult as they would have been.
Yeah, 100%. You want to do the silence track thing?
Oh, so here's a fun fact. Another fun fact. Did you know? So when you get down to the final track of the Night League, it's called Silence, and there's no music. And this is one of those things that people have noticed for a long time. And because it's called Silence, a lot of the fan base has basically just been like, oh, well, that was intentional because it pulls the music out and it becomes even more tense because all you can hear is the sound of the cars and all of that. Nope. They ran out of memory, so they just couldn't put music on the track.
Oh, I love that so much more.
And then they were like,
fantastic.
Well, it's fine. It works. We'll call it the Silence. And then it seems intentional, I guess. I don't know the real reasoning for the naming and any of that, but I do know that that wasn't on purpose. It was a limitation of the size of the console. Music. Like the chips that went on the little cartridge and all of that.
All right.
So but pretty crazy.
With that, let's talk to what is probably the most important legacy of the game, Mode 7. So for the development, Tom mentioned this earlier very well, that the development of F-Zero, the programmers utilized a new graphics mode that was made for Super Nintendo called Mode 7. This is huge. This jumped gaming forward, not just racing, but all gaming forward. Because now it helped solve one of the biggest flaws of games, which is the screens are 2D. No matter what you say about it, it's a two-dimensional space, and we have to trick our brains into believing this two-dimensional space is a three-dimensional space. We just did varying sizes. Make something small become big into the screen, makes you think it's coming at you, you know?
Right.
But in racing games, you have a bigger issue, turns. It is really hard to make a turn look good, and anyone who's played an arcade game from the 80s knows what I'm talking about. It's the tracks just looked like remember pole position, like the top of the screen would just bend funny, and it was like, oh, there's a turn there. Yeah, the turns were not. I realize probably most of us just haven't played F-Zero in the last week like you and I have, Tom. But F-Zero has hairpins in it. And if you think back to when you played an arcade game that was maybe like an 80s arcade game with racing, was there a hairpin in it? And the answer is there wasn't. They could not put a hairpin in there because the way the game was written, you couldn't visualize that. Mode 7 can. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, guys, I can't explain Mode 7 well, but Tom can. So I'm going to let Tom explain Mode 7 because I'm not
an expert on it. But so one of the things that happens here is that, and this is what I find most impressive about what's going on with the development of the Super Nintendo, is that they were coming off of the NES and the limitations on the NES, but they had a clear sense that they needed to go more towards 3D. Like 3D meaning polygonal things that actually work in like a 3D environment, not like a stereoscopic kind of headset sort of thing. Although they did try that as well with that weird headset they put out, but that's a whole other story.
Ooh.
Right. But they were trying to go in that direction, and the Super Nintendo still didn't have the actual horsepower to do that. But what they were able to do is play tricks with 2D objects to manipulate them in ways that they'd never been able to manipulate them before. So Mode 7 comes in, and you can take a 2D pixel, like sprite pixel with pixels on it, and then you can manipulate it. You can spin it, you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can lean it back and make it look like it's extending into the distance. And so the tracks that you're on in F-Zero are all one texture that has been leaned forward to create this perspective like you're actually looking into the distance. And when you turn your vehicle, it's actually spinning the ground around you.
Yeah.
And that's what allows you to go around those hairpin turns and those types of things. And it creates this really interesting, trick. It's like a magic trick. It's like something you would do in a movie in order to make something look different and more three-dimensional than it actually is. So that's functionally what's happening, is they're just manipulating the sprites, but in a way that fools you into thinking that it might be more three-dimensional than it actually is.
And this is huge for racing games, because this is what was holding racing games back, because you really just couldn't race.
Yeah.
Like a better phrase.
Well, you couldn't do realistic looking courses. And Mode 7 had its limits as well. Like, you'll notice you never actually go over any track pieces that cover over any track pieces. There's no bridges. There's nothing that moves vertically unless you hit a jump and then your little car moves up over the track and back down. But that's all, again, simulations. There's no actual third dimension. There's no like Z-axis. It doesn't exist.
And it was funny, when I didn't know about this, obviously, until we were doing this cast. So I went to look it up, and I'm like, okay, well, there were racing games, weren't there, for Nintendo? Turns out there weren't. I looked them up. So when I looked up the top racing games for Nintendo, there were RC Pro-Am, never heard of it.
I remember that one. Yep.
Rad Racer, Micro Machines, Formula One. The only one I ever heard of was Excite Bike, and I played Excite Bike. Excite Bike was a side scroll, and I realized Micro Machines was a side scroll. Most of these racing games,
RC Pro-Am was top down. Like it was either top down or side scroll, or it was something like Pole Position, which looked like it was going off into the distance, but the road just converged toward the middle. Wasn't actually 3D by any means.
After the creation of Mode 7, then you get Daytona USA, Sega Rally Championship, Ridge Racer, Cruising USA. These are big.
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart. Right. All of it explodes. And it's because this style comes out and they show, oh, now you can do this. This actually, that's why F-Zero's huge. It helps launch racing games. So, but, we're, 25 something minutes into this. Let's have a chat about, though, you and I did play this game. We're not just talking about the game. What was it like playing it? Because I'll be honest. I don't like racing games. Of all the game genres there are, it's one of my least favorites. If you like, no comment. I'm not making a comment. People who do
this isn't a judgment. This is just a personal preference thing. Sure.
Racing, racing, simulation, and puzzle and survival. Those are all fall in my lowest category. Real-time strategy, like first-person shooter. Those are this is like action adventure. Those are my things. But I will say, I did enjoy F-Zero. In fact, I put almost 3 hours into it because as we were discussing earlier, and we'll talk more about it, it pulled me in. It had ways to kind of pull me in because it had some elements that maybe it wasn't even the racing. It might have just been, honestly, the nostalgia of all things pulled me into it to say, that's where that came from. So,
I had a similar experience. It was one of those things where when I would sit down and play it, more time would go by than I expected. And I think it was part of the whole crap, I got second place. I can do better. That whole thing. And I was like, oh, and I can make that turn better. I can avoid the cars. I know I can do this. I did it when I was a kid, that stuff. And as a kid, this game, there's something about the aesthetics of this game and the speed. I remember feeling like it was very, very fast. And it was the type of game that really challenged my ability to manage the controls and respond correctly in a way that was different. It's not like there weren't challenging games on the NES and the Super NES and the Genesis. There were challenging games, but a lot of them were challenging to jump over something or challenging to fight an enemy or something like this. And this was more about timing that turn perfectly and hitting the boost at the right time and learning the map. And I had a little bit of that experience going back into it again, but it was less about the visuals just are not as impressive as they were to me as a kid, which I thought were really cool. But the game design I noticed holds up. There's definitely that element of, hey, this is actually fun and challenging in a good way. I want to keep getting better at it. And racing games, like you, they're not my favorite genre, but I feel like I treat racing games kind of like a tourist. I like to go visit them. I'll go visit a game. I'll play it for 10 or 12 hours, pick up a Gran Turismo when it comes out or something and put, 15 hours into it and get the coolest cars that I wanted to get. And they might not even be the best cars in the game, but it's just, that cool old looking Mustang's cool. I'm going to get that or whatever. And then try it out on some courses and get so far into the game. And then I kind of get done with it. And that's how I experience these games. But it makes sense. And I've, in this experience, realized how much of a cornerstone this was, not just to the racing genre, but my own understanding of racing. It totally was.
I agree. That's what's really fun about the game is you get into it and there's a difficulty in it that is challenging, but not punishing. And that's one of the thing that the more episodes we've done on this show, especially some of the Nintendo games, a lot of the challenges felt punishing. It was in order to beat it, you were beating it out of spite. than you were actually being like, no, I can do this. Whereas F-Zero really was a second place.
It's just within reach. It's just within reach.
Right. I got this. I'm going back in. And you're right. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm 3 hours in and my wife's saying, hey, you want dinner? Like, I probably do. Yeah. Let's knock that off. And I mean, to myself, like I was able to I won the first circuit on expert. The second circuit, I only got to standard. I couldn't do it on expert. I tried, but
it's harder. It's a lot harder.
It does. They do go up there.
It ramps up.
But you do. And I enjoyed just also the fact that memorization wasn't enough. One thing, we talked about them earlier, and I think they fall into both a good and a bad, but the extra cars in the track, I think is a cool element because you can memorize the track. Yeah, you can memorize the turn, but you can't always take the line you want on that turn because there might be a blinking car in it that if you hit, you're going to explode. So it was those little bits of like, oh, this is kind of cool. Also, one thing we forgot to mention, the cars will block you. When you if you're coming up behind somebody, they taught these days we call everything an AI, but back then it was just a computer. They taught it to learn to actually block you off so you couldn't pass. Right. This game did. I mean, and to your point, that is a standard in racing games. It's one of the most important things probably in a lot of the racing games is can your opponent keep you from passing? Yeah, that's where it comes from.
I mean, that's a big element in racing. And any type of racing you're going to do today is like making sure you hold your position and don't let other people pass you. I also have this really vague memory because you can do the regular mode where you compete against all the other cars, but then you can do basically time trials. And it's called like a tester. It has a name. I forget what the name is.
Practice. I think it's called practice.
It's called practice.
It's called practice. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Practice mode. And so you get to pick your course. You get to pick if you want to have other cars with you or not. You can pick just one car to compete with. And this vague memory I have is once I got through the main game, or maybe it was even as I was getting higher and higher in the difficulty, I would go to practice mode and do the races without any other cars on the track. So I could get as good as I possibly could at following the best line possible through the course so that I had an even better chance once the other cars were around to know when like, oh, this is a good time to pass or like, this is a good time to boost, any of that stuff. Because for some reason, playing with those other cars wasn't as familiar to me as playing just the course by myself, which makes me believe that I must have done that a lot.
But what's funny is what you just described there. That's like something you have to do in Gran Turismo. That's something you have to do. And I guess
or as a real race driver is to just practice the course.
Yeah. But this is these types of things. And this is why when we talk about interesting thing about F-Zero is it's not ahead of its time, but it's the progenitor of these games because it was the one to actually really lean into this stuff and say, it wasn't that they were trying to make even this super realistic game. It's just they did it in a way that a lot of other people copied it. Like when we talked last week about Warcraft, where there's so many things that we just do in real-time strategy games now that whether it's the right way or the wrong way to do it, it's the way we do it because that's the way Blizzard told us to do it 30 years ago.
Right.
So that's just how we do it now.
Right. And even if it is, well, I don't know the best way to state this, but it also feels intuitive, not because there's a history of it, but because if we were to go back to 1991 and try to design a new racing game, some of the features we probably would have thought about if we actually sat down as that team making the game and going, you know, what things do other racing games not have yet that we wish they had? What if you had a practice mode? Well, that seems great. Let's do that. Or the game gets boring when you're out there in front of everybody yourself. So let's add extra cars to the track. You know, like it just seems obvious in retrospect, but that means it was a genius idea at the time.
Yeah, and let's add an alien that you not realize is there. But if you open the manual, he is. Yeah. Although I will say there were a few misses, though.
So what did you dislike the most? Because I've got some bones to pick.
One of the ones I do find funny is there's no plot. I mean, there's none. This one and what was the Wings game that we launched with?
Pilot Wings?
It has the same plot as Pilot Wings.
Which is nothing. It's just go do this map. Good job.
That's it. Right. Like if you beat the game, there's no words. There's not even a scroll. There's just
it feels like something they so easily could have just added was like, okay, you load up a track, just load up a picture and put some words on the screen. Like, this is your first race in 20 years with this, with whatever character you picked.
Although, I'll be
on
honest,
a vengeance streak in order to get first place, whatever.
Right. That was my thought, but then you just told us a short while ago they didn't have enough memory for music and
right.
tracks, so maybe that's what happened here. Maybe they had a whole plan. They were like, "Oh yeah, you guys are out of memory," and they went, "All right, well, I guess people will figure
that.
Yeah, people can write it down themselves.
Well, what kind of story does a race game need anyway? You just want to get first place. Yeah.
And I will say, it is, as much as I like the variety, this is a hard thing. This is a hindsight complaint, which I don't like making hindsight complaints, but I have to.
Sure.
It's a little bland. You've only got 4 cars. The variation between them is not exactly. The yellow car is useless. I'm sorry. It's useless.
Yes, it is.
It is just useless. And the green one. You really are blue or fat pink car. Those are your 2 options. The green one, I'm sure someone in the comments is going to tell me I'm wrong, but the green one is not that helpful. The yellow one is straight up. That's a 3rd placer. Like, that's what you're going to get with that one.
Right.
So there's that one. That's and then there's some little bits of you mentioned earlier when you crash into the other cars in the tracks.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint is the physics of it don't make any sense. And I get the idea that it's like F-Zero, like zero gravity, like you're floating above the course, and so you're gonna slide around like a hockey puck or something. But even then, it doesn't act like a hockey puck. Like it. Yeah.
My son and I love playing air hockey. It doesn't move like that, man. Like
it doesn't move like an air hockey puck.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you, like I said earlier, you bump into another car and then you start moving more towards it, or you hit a wall and you're way likely to bounce off of that wall and hit another wall and hit another wall, and all of a sudden you're starting from nothing again.
Oh, you can go 1st to 7th very easily. A couple of these
very
tracks.
quick. Yeah. Right. So it is punishing in that regard. Mm-hmm. And some of the little traps are a little bit like the little magnets that pull you to the side of the track, because it's really hard to adjust yourself at an angle. Did you notice? Here's a question. This is something I realized. I think the last track I played this week was, did you know that the bumpers at the top of the controller do things?
Yeah, they pitch you. Yeah.
Yeah, they pitch you. You can adjust to the left and to the right a little bit.
The first thing I did was pull the manual because I
didn't read the manual.
Yeah, so they actually on the pink, they help a lot on the fat pink car. So the fat pink car, when you're taking corners, if you actually use that pitch, it makes a big difference coming through corners, especially with hairpins, which is one of the engineering, like almost I would say marvels of the game, is doing a hairpin turn. You can actually lean into the turn, brake and go, and you actually will get a better hook, which I was like, that's
right. Or pushing back against the magnets a little bit. Yep, that works for it. And I'm sure I knew this as a kid, but I didn't remember it until I'd already played for a long time. And little details about letting go of the accelerator is sometimes better than hitting the brake, depending on the turn you're on. But again, that works in real racing as well. Yeah. Sometimes you just want to like coast into a turn rather than actually hard brake. Sure. So that stuff makes sense, but definitely the bouncing around part and some of the traps were, like you could get bumped into a jump and then fly off the course and now you're done and you just have to start over. That's a little punishing.
Occasionally you're like, hey guys, this is a bit much. But I think overall, I mean, it was. My viewpoint on the bads are it's a limit. The game had limited in its design. So a couple of times they were like, all right, guys, tone it down a bit. But having played Battletoads, I'm like, it's fine.
No, really. Yeah. No, it feels like some little things they could have polished a little bit better had they just pushed back the release a month or two. But I will ultimately, not a problem.
Fun story on this is they did make a sequel to this. And it dudded so badly.
I didn't remember that there was a sequel. I never played it, I think.
I believe it's for N64, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it went nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute dud. Because it just, at that point, the interest wasn't there. So, the original idea was to turn into a franchise. Which is, there's an element where I knew that, and then when you told me earlier when they wanted to make whatever Captain Incredible or whatever his name is, Captain Falcon, like they would have him surpass Super Mario. It's like, look, the developers of this game got a little bit big for their britches and what they were expecting for a racing game like adherence. People are going to love this game. They're not putting posters of F-Zero on their walls, man. Like there's no F-Zero backpacks going to school. Like,
right. I think a lot of that comes from, it's one of those things that a lot of people do is they don't realize why they were successful. So from Nintendo's perspective, they put out a really good game, Super Mario Brothers, and it was way better than a lot of the other games that were out at the time, and it became extremely popular. And then Mario became an iconic character, kind of like Mickey Mouse. And it just happened. And they didn't really understand why it happened, but if they had really narrowed that down, it wasn't because they released a console and that was one of the games that was early on the console, and so it just sort of happened. No, Super Mario Brothers was an amazing step forward for the way games worked. That's why it was so successful. This is an amazing step forward for the way racing games work,
right?
But not games, period. You know? So and on top of it, you can see Mario. You look at him the whole time you're playing the game. The only time you ever see Captain Planet, never.
Yeah,
is there a picture of him in the game anywhere?
I'll be honest, I also liked Pilot
Captain.
Wings
I just called him. Sorry, I just called him Captain Planet. That's hilarious.
I was leaving it in there, but
we're gonna leave that in. Captain Falcon. We're gonna call him Captain Planet from now on.
Yeah, and I'll be candid, I liked Pilot Wings more. Like I actually, but God, that game was.
It was more puzzly. This was more. It was
a thing. But okay, let's close out this. I wanted to do a little twist this week on the episode, and instead of does it hold up, what I want to say is who and why of our listeners should go and play F-Zero, Tom. Because like to me, I think it's anyone who has nostalgia for old games should play it, even if it's just for an hour or two. Because it's fun to go back and remember what an early racing game was like. And because this genre's come a long way. But also, if you're a big fan of racing games like Gran Turismo, Mario Kart, etc., you need to go play this game. Because you need to go see, oh, wow, that's where it came from. But like, who do you think, you played F-Zero, who would you recommend, hey, you should go get an emulator and play some F-Zero?
Yeah, no, I think across the board, most of the time, even when the games are terrible, if people have nostalgia for that time period, if they played those games as a kid or whatever, it's almost always the answer is, go play it. Go try it out again. See how bad Battletoads is, whatever. But I think you're right. The second group is if you are somebody who's listening to this because you missed out on it. Maybe you lived through it, but you never picked it up. Or maybe you're younger and these games were absolutely not on your radar. You didn't have an older sibling who had an older console or anything like that.
This game is older than you, which is going to come up a lot. Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of people, right? Like at this point. But if you are somebody who enjoys racing games, and racing games meaning Mario Kart or meaning Gran Turismo, realistic ones or kart racers, any of that stuff, the foundations for a lot of what is in those games is in here, kind of like we talked about with Warcraft. So it's worth just from that perspective to load it up and play for an hour and just see what you think. And then I think you're going to go back to modern racers with kind of a different perspective.
Yeah, because it is. You'll see this stuff like, oh, wow, that's what it was. But there you go, guys. I think this is exciting. I think this game was fun. I hope you all enjoyed this. Next week, we are going to go a bit further back in time to maybe the origin of, first-person shooters for me. Doom.
Yeah. So Doom. We're going to talk about Doom. I think it's what year did Doom came out in 90?
It's not the original because Wolfenstein 3D is the original. That one I know.
Doom. Okay, so 93. So original Doom is 93. Yeah, they did Wolfenstein before that, but not as many people played it. Doom was the one that really took off. So we're jumping ahead 2 more years into Doom. So we're not going further back. We're going further, I guess.
Yeah, we're going further. That's true.
The granddaddy of all first-person shooters, the one that defined the genre and still defines the genre.
One of the most stable games ever made. You can install it on a refrigerator to this day.
Yeah.
If you have a smart refrigerator, you can play. You can put Doom on it. I don't know how you're going to play it on it. You can install it on a watch. It is one of. It is an amazing game.
It's a technological marvel in a way that Mode 7 was. The entire game is.
Oh yeah, Doom's wild, and we're gonna have a lot of fun next week talking really less about the actual game itself. Fun game, love playing it, but it's gonna be a lot more about, I think next week, more about the legacy and what Doom was, how Doom spread. I remember we had a computer lab we were in middle school for me. I'm going to spoil the lead here. I'll tell the story again next week. And we installed it on every single computer in that computer lab because it was a shareware game, so you could. Yeah. I remember 15, 20 kids sitting there playing Doom. Mm-hmm. Probably could have been learning to type. I'll be honest with you. I was there to learn how to type. I can type just fine. I missed out on zero typing skills, got lost, but I got to play Doom.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll tell more stories next week. But until then, we have a sign off? Do you have some wise words for people?
Plugs. We should probably do the plugs.
Plugs. Oh, yeah. Plugs. Let's do plugs. Hey, if you like this show and you like us, check out our other shows. I do the Fallout Lorecast, the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, and the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. And John does the 40K Lorecast and the History of 40K. So if you're into any of those series or whatever, come check out our stuff. We have very popular shows. I'll just pat ourselves on the back a little bit. People seem to like our stuff, so go check it out.
Exactly. But I think, let's do a simple sign off. So till next week. See you then.
Go play some F-Zero. Later.
Yep.
Recall.
Robots Radio. Games. Lore. Stories. Community. Just press play.